Hi everyone. Welcome to part B of network security migrations. At this stage, where we have done most of the staging stuff, now we engage with the customer to know about his environment, to look at the existing state of the firewall, the network, and the services that he is running at this time. Hey, how are you doing? This is Joey's phrase in Friends, if you remember. Now, existing firewall. What are the major things in an existing firewall? You'll most probably notice physical and logical interfaces, set of private and public IP addresses that are configured on his internal and external zones, and there is a zone segmentation where you most probably see inside DMZ, outside, and WAN segments. Net policies configured, enterprise and public routes. These might be static, they might be dynamic on any of the dynamic routing protocols, and you will have two flavors of the VPN. One might be side to side, the other might be a remote access. So you have some address objects and their groups, and you will have some users, either local users or the ones that has been known through the user directory, and their respective groups as well, they would be there. So the security policies, now this particular area would require some critical observation, where you would be looking at unused old policies, the ones that are no more used, and some of the policies that has been disabled. So you will be critically investigating these policies and not taking them with you in the migration process. You might have a firewall where you get hit counts. That would be a bonus for you. So be on the lookout for as much information as you get with respect to the security policies. Security services, the firewall might be running an antivirus inspector, an IPS, web content filter, URL filter, connecting to a sandbox. It might be inline, it might be on the cloud, and of course some sites would have some sort of log retention policies. They might be connecting to a syslog server, they might have a SIM over there. So these things should be taken into consideration. So when you're done with the firewall, you have to see your upstream and downstream devices, how they are connecting to the firewall. You must, if you are on the north-south segment, you will have an internet router over there. You might not have it as well. Your firewall might be terminating to the ISPs directly. On the downstream side, in most of the enterprises, you are connecting to some sort of core switching infrastructure. So you would be required just to see the information of the routing table and observe it. So some considerations, I mean, as for the network guys, just see at the CIDRs, the supernets, the subnets, how they are routed. Since it's all about RFC 1918 within the enterprise, so most probably you will be required to observe how you might access your major networks, or in a firewall, if you have the flexibility to point major networks to some hopes downstream or upstream to your firewall. Make sure you do not have any anomalies which are Oblivion over there, which you see in the routing table or the forwarding table of your device. After that, you will just sit over there with the services owners if you have that flexibility, if you have that luxury, in fact, to sit with each and every service owner to investigate what services are dependent on the firewall that you are going to deploy. So just create a list. Most of the time these are web services, so it's just a URL that needs to be accessed internally or externally. It's either like an inbound service, or it's an outbound service, or it's if you're doing a data center firewall, it would most probably a service within the enterprise over there. It's either a web service, it might be a client server application as well. So create a list of IPs that you think are pingable. Well, you create them prior to going to your new firewall. Just create those IP addresses, do a ping. I'm an old school, so you just make a batch file and go to your NOC station or a SOC segment that you have given. Just go to that, do all the pings from that batch file, and observe like you are able to open all the services from that station. I usually tend to make like a rough or a sort of a diagram that makes sense to me, actually, how the network flow is going on, and it gives me a clear understanding, like if I have sort of a destination network I need to reach to, so these are the hops that I need to consider, and I assume these hops have those routes, and sometimes I usually test them with the traceroute command as well. So make a batch file, do the pings, put the URLs over there, and that's it. So at this time you have acquired all the necessary configuration and you got the vital information that would assist you in building the configuration of the new firewall. Now, the vendor whose firewall you are about to deploy most probably will give you some sort of migration tool which would assist you in doing the migration or configuration migration or configuration translation, but you have to work with caution on that too. So it's step-by-step thing. You identify the physical interfaces and you assign the IP addresses accordingly to those interfaces, and you move up to the virtual or logical interfaces, and you reach up to the NAT. NAT is one of the most common configurations that sometimes we tend to make mistake into when we are migrating to the new vendor, because it becomes really vital for you at this time to actually understand how the vendor is doing the NAT. So make sure you understand the vendor's best recipe for doing NAT on his firewall. So just to rephrase, make sure you understand how your new firewall does NATing, source NAT or DNAT. So this is vital. Security policies, in most of my migrations, well, it's port and protocol. So we usually start with the port and protocol, and if you know your application engine very well, go ahead, apply the things, but most of the time it's the port and protocol that we choose for the initial production stage of the firewall. VPNs would become sort of a vital KPI for you to achieve during the migration process. So KPI, yeah. So it's a sort of a vital thing, because it's a connectivity to either like a partner site or one of your branches. So you need to make sure like your VPNs become up as well. But in most of the cases, you need somebody at the other side who can assist you in troubleshooting VPN, your phase 1, your phase 2, and how the logs are behaving. So this is there. So your major objective that has to be like propagated is like, we are targeting a like-to-like migration, and as soon as we put the new firewall into the like-to-like state, we will make it stable, and after that we will do all the enhancements, the feature activations, the design changes that are required. Now scripting becomes very handy. So if you know tips and tricks on the CLI of your new vendor, the repeating task that can be done like in a nick of a time or in a speedy way. So if you are into the programming aspect, you know Python or something like this, then you're worth a million. Yeah. So make sure to enable logs with security policies. So so the thing is, enabling logs is very important at this stage, because those logs would be the key for you to build on the configuration in the new firewall. So I have seen administrators take the risk, or I have seen implementers taking the risk of like doing any log for the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes during the switchover, and they are putting the new firewall, because they want to get as much information as they can and tally it to the security policies that they digged out. So you need to assess that. You need to look at the impact very critically. Like if you do an any on an ISP which is doing millions of sessions, you might like have the firewall getting crashed. So make sure you have logs and you have as much as you can of them. Yeah. And if we go to the next slide, so here you are. Now you have made your new firewall ready, and you are confident enough to tell your customer in this pre-migration engagement, hey guys, I'm your Avenger now, so we are ready to do the switchover. Now your sensible talk would most probably, there is a baseline configuration that is ready, and it will definitely achieve a like-to-like migration, but it depends like your other side. If you want your VPNs to be ready, just make sure somebody is there at the other side, and your people who have like ownership for critical services, they are available on the site when we are doing the switchover, or they are there to test the services after the switchover. Well, it's a table talk here, so try to document the stuff, like what is going to happen now, like what you are going to change and how you are going to change it, and like if you are doing like physical switchover, like you have to have a sort of requirement over there, like the physical cables should be ready and terminated over there for the new firewall. And yeah, so the most important thing, if you cleared all the switch over thoughts over there, you had to have a rollback procedure. A clear-cut rollback procedure should be in place, and it should be communicated with the concerned teams. Any configuration change in the upstream or downstream equipment. So if you are doing a like-to-like migration, it's just, I think, the physical cable switch over, and in some good enterprises where they have good network teams that might not even be there, they will just do logical, like shut and unshut on the ports. But if you are doing a like-to-like migration, it would most probably be a sort of physical cable switchover. So you're just taking out the physical cables from the old firewall and terminating them to your new firewall. So there is a migration type where we call service by service, but that's really an advanced migration where we have a firewall, where we have an existing firewall, and we put a new firewall with complete different L3 configurations, and we migrate things instead of like complete one shot. We do migrate them service by service. So what happens is, like, you do some sort of source route from your downstream equipment, and you deroute them to your upstream, and vice versa. This sort of a scenario where you are actually controlling the packet with either the source or the destination that you want the packet to reach to. So the switchover mechanism, in this case, it's like you are doing L1, L2, L3. You did a switchover. So if you are doing a rollback, it's going to be L3, L2, L1. Well, you can have a question mark over there, but it's not really the case that I would be pondering upon. But in case of service by service migrations, we have existing firewalls and new firewalls running in parallel, and we are actually migrating services one by one over there. So the migration window, so least disruptive in health. So the migration window, or should I call it the migration window? So the maintenance window would have the migration window, yeah. So it's the maintenance window. So the migration window basically should be least disruptive in health and financial sectors, and the approval for the maintenance window and deciding on the next time of execution. So after stating all of this, you are ready to ask for a maintenance window, and you will notify the configuration change management body, like, okay, so these are the configuration changes that you will be doing, and of course there is an approval process that you need to wait for, and as soon as that approval comes in, stakeholders and service owners and users, they are most probably been notified by that time. So this is with this stage. Then we go to the judgment day. Well, we have this maintenance window now, and what you do, you run services and reachability check before the switchover. So this is necessary. You come there, and before you do the switchover, you have to make sure the things are not in an abnormal state. So everything is normal. You do run your services and reachability checklist before the switchover. Existing firewall is super. No major changes on that firewall that can impact your existing configuration. And so if the existing firewall is an HA, and most probably it's an active passive HA, make sure the standby unit or the passive unit will not take over or not become active if you do the switchover. No critical issues being investigated. So at this time, there isn't anything major going on in the infrastructure. Like make sure like it's not the end of the month and people are expecting their salaries. So nothing of that sort is going to happen on those days. So execute the switch over. If it did not work, well, you have 5 minutes or less. What you're gonna do? So nothing is pingable, not even the LAN side of the firewall. Yeah, it's most probably something on the network side. Look into this. Test with the security policy of, okay, so you put security policies, nothing is working. Well, let's do the any shot. It's risky. It's that criticality thing that you need to observe, but just do it. If things work, you need to look into the order of your security policies and how the hit is working. Well, the good thing now, you at least have some sort of hits on your security policies. You have some sort of logs now in your firewall. So for the last 5 or 10 minutes of the maintenance window. So start your investigation and do your rollback. Well, you need to do your rollback. After the rollback is successful and you have diagnosed the issue, you need to reschedule the maintenance window. The switch over went very smooth and no apparent issues. Make sure like all services and network is reachable there. Again, your ping test, your service test that are required. You have to monitor and observe policies and their hit counts. Well, you have those policies up and running, how they are intercepting the traffic now, and how the hit count is going on, and what their respective logs are saying to you. Well, some applications they might not have run in that maintenance window. So time attendance systems, they run at AM. You did the maintenance at like 4 AM in the morning. So make sure those systems are functioning as well with their respective policies. The system log and the traffic log, like these are the things that you will be actually looking into very deep over there now. Do not decommission the old firewall. Do not decommission the old firewall, and do not make the new firewall or do not make like sort of production changes on the new firewall. Just observe the new firewall for at least 24 to 72 hours. Make sure the rollback procedure is understood, and if you gave it a day and you give it a day, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. So you observed like the traffic for one day, and you felt like it's operational and things are normal. So make sure if you have 24/7 operations in that enterprise, like the rollback procedure is understood by the handover teams over there. Yeah. So make sure the IT environment logs any changes in this test run of the new firewall. Well, so you come tomorrow morning, you observe like somebody saying something is not working. So guys, did anybody change anything? Yeah, somebody has sort of shut down a switch somewhere or rebooted a switch somewhere. So make sure like these changes are like logged, or it's sort of observed by the customer's network team. Next slide. So the show must go on. Yeah. So you have an HA configuration you need to bring up at this time. So after stable operations, after the 48 hours, or what you do, the first thing you do before you like start populating the firewall with the new features and the optimization of the policies, it is recommended you do the HA configuration. So most of the enterprises they go for the active passive. It should be the easiest, and of course if you require to test it, you have to schedule a maintenance window for that. And So in active passive, it's usually your configuration synchronization and your session synchronization. These are the two more vital things over there. You have active things, and you have clusters. So they require, I mean, these ones, if you have migrated if you have migrated your existing firewalls with these configurations, then in these scenarios, actually you already have the firewalls ready. So let me rephrase. So if you have migrated your existing environment with an active scenario where you had asymmetric routing, or where you had like cluster configurations. So cluster configurations, some firewalls have them in terms of HA, some firewalls have them in terms of load balancing of sessions. So but that's another topic that we'll go into. But most probably, if you're doing these two, you already have your firewalls ready, and they are doing this particular either session load balancing within the cluster configuration, or asymmetric routing is there. So HA testing should be conducted in proper maintenance window. So it's the usual thing: the device failure, you simulate the device failure, you simulate the link failure, you simulate the logical gateway failure, and your HA is up and running. So we go on. So you are now in the post-migration stage, where your new firewall is in production, or your set of firewalls are in production. And so here starts the work of icing the cake. No, it's basically the fine-tuning and optimization process. And so there are three areas where you would be actually working on. So policy fine-tuning and optimization. So wherever you have fragmented policies, or a sort of bolted policies, if I am using the right term for it, you need to consolidate or conjoin, if it is a word. You need to make those policies granular, more effective, less intensive on your firewall, and more effective to your understanding. So this is a long and lengthy process. It requires a change by change process. So you do something in certain policies, you leave it there, you see how the environment behaves, and you come back to the other task. In parallel, you are doing the feature activation process. So you have some sort of a new content filter, you have the IPS, you have the antivirus, all these are activated over there. You are looking at your threat logs and investigating any sort of anomalies in your applications, and you are doing some sort of what we call it false positive elimination process. So this is one of the things as well. And so traffic log, your security policy logs. So I have covered them. I have covered most of the bullets here. The good thing is, like in most of these processes, if you are working remotely, it should be acceptable by your customer. So in this process, you are usually off-site, and you are giving a customer a sort of an engagement once or twice a week on a web session, and it in my cases for big enterprises, it usually goes from 3 to 6 months. So I what I tend to do is like I do an official sign off and get those like sort of enhancements into my support period, and it uh, it remains flexible with the customer. So in the sense like this is a new product, so the administrator would definitely have a learning curve. So you don't tend to do complications in the configuration process, and you do the essentials and try to make the administrator catch up, and accordingly uh, you take him onward with the features that you enabled or the design changes you are conducting. Uh, the best practice is to make a design either in LLD and HTL. Documentation is recommended if the customer has a certain format, which is a configuration change database or a configuration manual. So you can just document your stuff according to his documentation plan, or you can make a generic document of the configurations you've done and make it as a baseline given in your certificate of clearance. Where some incidents happen, and people would always put the notion, since that change happened, that's why we have these things coming on. So you can shout it's not the firewall, but you have to always know what it is then. So of course you cannot shout that unless you're Arnold Schwarzenegger. So make sure, if you know it's not the firewall, you know what is causing that issue then. Yeah. So thank you very much for seeing up to here. The videos are long. I am a slow talker. So I hope I do some enhancement in my coming like topics. So thank you for watching. Do give me your valuable input. Do correct me if I am doing certain things wrong. Do enlighten me with your experience. I would definitely be very grateful to you guys. And stay tuned. Yeah, you have a good one, everyone.